Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield Presents Let's See What's Out There, a weekly video stream and podcast currently focused on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is available to watch on Paramount Plus. My name's Keith Isles and I am joined by
Pete Mealy.
And we are both film and television enthusiasts. And in today's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around episode 2 of season 2, Ad Astra per Aspera. So, which I believe actually stands for it's the Latin phrase "to the stars through difficulty." So there you go. They're using Latin phrases here for for this episode. If you're new to this channel and you're finding us for the first time, then welcome. Please do check out some of the other videos that we have on this channel. They're not just about Star Trek, they're about other franchises as well, and film and television in general. We do everything from home media reviews to deep breakdowns of related media, all sorts of things. So if that's your kind of jelly and you like what you see, then consider subscribing to the channel perhaps, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified as and when material drops. On that note, this is actually going out a week later than we intended. Unfortunately, life, happens and gets in the way sometimes with busy jobs and us being different sides of the Atlantic and all of that sort of good stuff. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a double episode dropped this week. So we're going to be looking at episodes 2 and episode 3 in a separate one, rather than doing what we've done in the past and trying to do 2 episodes in one. Always gets a little bit confusing. So we've done that. On that note as well, if you are watching us through YouTube, something I've noticed that YouTube have started doing is they're separating their videos from their live streams. So they're now on separate tabs. So if you come to the channel, you'll probably see the videos, which is largely around home media releases, Blu-ray, DVD, 4K, that kind of thing, and related media. But if you click on live, you will see all of these live stream and video stream episodes. So please check that out. And also check us out on your favorite podcasting app as well. Wow, that was a lot, Pete. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, good. I sometimes wish we could get these episodes out sooner, but as I said, that sometimes cannot be helped. It's just the way life goes, right?
Yeah, it's the way life goes, and I think plenty of people are watching these not on release week anyway, right? Even the episodes from Star Trek,
probably
people catch up with later.
Yeah, in this world of streaming, it is all a bit different, isn't it? So just for anyone that has maybe just joined us and think, what the hell are these guys talking about? So we've got a very loose format that we stick to with this. We do a brief little spoiler summary of the episode. We look at some of the behind the scenes and guest star credits and writer director credits, things of that nature. Then we look at references to other Star Trek material and little Easter eggs and in-jokes, that kind of thing. We then do our predictions as to where we think all this might be going. And then finally, we do get into our thoughts and nitpicks on the show. And we've got our own rank sleeve rating system for this series. So yeah, look out for that as well. But Pete, I guess we just need to get on with it. So hit it.
Okay, number 1 had a rough childhood because she was an augment. Starfleet wants to sweep the situation under the rug and kick number 1 out of Starfleet, but leave her as a free Federation citizen. Pike convinces an Illyrian lawyer to represent number 1. They knew each other growing up, but the lawyer resents number 1 for joining Starfleet. They turned down the plea deal, and now the Federation is out for blood. In return, Illyrian Perry Mason brings it to the Federation, pointing out the hypocrisy of the Federation and its accordance with the Prime Directive only when convenient. We can't figure out who turned number one into the authorities. It wasn't La'an, even though she is a Noonien Singh. While on the stand, number one tells the story of how her colony was accepted into the Federation on the condition that augmentation stopped. But it was her culture and her tradition, so it continued. And when families were caught, they were persecuted. Anti-augmentation laws led to cultural ostracization. So number one kept her culture alive, but hid it until she turned herself in. See, she self-reported because she didn't think she should need to hide in Starfleet, and Starfleet should accept her. The prosecution uses this open door to ask Pike when he first learned about her truth, which was 4 months before she was arrested. And so the conspiracy charges may be shared. But lo and behold, number one technically did the right thing, looking to join Starfleet, asking for help, and so she is granted asylum and a not guilty plea. She then returns to the crew, and all is right.
Nice one. Yeah, quite a lot happened. Well, it sort of did and it didn't, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, you did a very good job as usual of being concise with that. So thank you very much. Now it's time to have a look at this week's credits in Make It So. Alrighty, so this week's episode, or last week's episode, as we're recording this, was directed by Valerie Weiss. Directing duties on this. Valerie's credits as far as a director, they go back. She did a few bits and pieces like short films and TV episodes, etc. But in 2000 and where are we? I'm trying to find the first one. 2016, she did The Archer, an episode of Chicago PD, an episode of The Librarians, an episode of Scandal, an episode of Impulse, How to Get Away with Murder, Chicago Med, 3 episodes of that, 3 episodes of Suits, The Resident, The Rookie, For the People, Why Women Kill, Bull, Prodigal Son, Echoes, the TV miniseries, Monarch, 2 episodes of that, Outer Banks, which brings us to this 1 episode so far of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So a lot of directing experience of episodic television. So good stuff there. And this week's episode is written by Dana Horgan. Dana's credits as a writer, she was story editor on the TV series Once Upon a Time, having done 27 episodes of that between 2014 to 2018. She also wrote 14 episodes of the Supergirl TV series, part of the Greg Berlanti Arrowverse, which brings her now to Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And this is the first writing credit for Star Trek. So good stuff there. I thought I'd also look at sort of main guest stars that we have in this show every week, just to sort of look at some of the cast members outside of the main ensemble, the main established cast. So playing Neera, the prosecutor, or should I say the defense, this week, is Yetidi Badaki, who has lots of acting credits, best known for Rise, but has also had various credits, things like Casey, Undercover, This is us playing Chi Chi in that series. Also, The Magicians playing Zoe Marcus TV show, and probably best known for the role of Billiquis in 26 episodes of American Gods, before bringing to this
Oh,
Strange New World. So there you go. If you recognised her, that was what it was from. So, but yeah, I think they are, when it comes to guest cast, they are choosing quite wisely and choosing sort of strong actors for these parts. So yeah, that was this week's credits. What did you think of all that?
excellently done. Excellently done. Yeah. I did not recognize the lawyer from American Gods, but that was a good show. I liked
Yeah,
it.
cool. All right. Well, we don't actually know what Captain Pike's drink is yet, do we? Really, he hasn't
No, I
got
don't think
like
so.
a sort of
Yeah.
signature drink yet. So I think, in the meantime, let's have some tea, Earl Grey hot. All right, so this is the bit where we just have a bit of fun. We look at some of the Easter eggs, references, callbacks to other things, etc. I always caveat by saying that, we're not the most comprehensive list of this. There are YouTube channels out there that do specifically this sort of thing. But we always try and have a go just for a bit of a laugh, really. So, Pete, anything that stood out for you?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I mean, the information disc that Pike puts down for the lawyer was very much reminiscent of the original series, and so I enjoyed that. One of the Starfleet judges is a Tellarite, and I don't know if we've seen them yet in Strange New Worlds, but I don't know. They're always one of those species I liked popping up. And I, just took the general note that the whole feel of the show felt a lot like the original series Menagerie episode that was like the TV trial of Spock
Yep.
and Pike, right? Or Spock for stealing the ship. Yeah. But yeah.
Even though he got away with that last week, as we went into.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I got. What about you?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, again, I was having trouble finding some of the imagery in the sort of scramble to do this, but yeah, as you mentioned there, I also noticed that the tape for the trial or whatever was very reminiscent of what we'd seen in previous, things like, as you said, the Menagerie and Court Martial and Measure of a Man, for Next Gen and all of that sort of thing. So nice to have a bit of consistency there with that sort of thing. Also, the courtroom itself, you had I couldn't find a picture of it, but you had the bell, the old school bell and everything, which was referent right back to the original series. You had the sort of glowing truth detector thing that they rest their right hand on the chairs, up on the box, which again, I tried to find an episode or a picture there of Kirk with it, as well as Una in this episode. I'm a big one about uniforms and all of that sort of thing. And obviously we had the updated version, the Strange New World updated look version of the dress uniforms that we saw back in the 60s episodes there, in the various colors, etc., with the braids and different badges and ornaments and medals and all of that sort of stuff, which I thought was a good callback. Quite interestingly, one of the things about the uniforms in the original series is the command uniform was actually always green, but it was to do with a mixture of studio lighting and film stock development, photochemical stuff that always made it look sort of yellowy gold, and which obviously then became from the animated series and everything we've got since, that became the sort of de facto color, the yellowy gold for command of this era. And they did the same, that they sort of stuck with that for the dress uniforms. I did wonder, as we'd seen Pike last season in a variant of the green wraparound uniform, I did wonder whether they were going to go green or whether they were going to go gold with this, simply because in the original series, even though the normal uniforms kind of came across looking gold, as you could see there by the picture of Kirk, the dress uniforms definitely had a green hue to them, as was supposed to be the color. But I think to save confusion, they sort of stuck with the gold there. I know I spend way too much time thinking about this stuff, but so I got a few pictures of that in there. The other thing that I thought was quite a nice bit of continuity is back in 2019, between one of the series of Star Trek Discovery, they did actually produce some Star Trek shorts. They were sort of more experimental type films with animation and all sorts of things, but sort of fitting into the timeline of Star Trek. And we did actually get one of those episodes was called Q&A, and it showed Spock's first day aboard the Enterprise as an ensign. And the first person he meets, of course, is number one, his first officer, Una. And they end up getting stuck in a turbo lift together on his first day. And one of the things he finds out, that they find out things about each other, and that he finds out that she can sing, and she's into Gilbert and Sullivan and all of that. So it was quite a nice reference that during his trial, when he's asked to sort of give a character witness testament on her there, that one of the things he says he noticed something strange right away, and reference that meeting, which I thought was quite a nice little connection to everything.
Yeah.
We obviously get and I'll save most of this for the next episode, but it is actually talked about Leanne's connection to Khan because of her surname, etc. Which I think this is the first time they've actually sort of brought light onto that, as it were. We get some of Captain April's backstory as well in this, which I thought was pretty cool to find out a little bit more about Robert April, and we got some dates referencing back to the very early voyages of the Starship Enterprise, long before Pike's time, which was good. And I don't know whether I've got this right, but I think, and again, sorry, I've not had enough time to do my homework properly and double check on this, but there was a DS9 episode called Dr. Bashir, I presume, where they find out that, Julian Bashir was genetically enhanced, and Starfleet were a little bit more lenient towards the whole thing about augments and whatever, and genetically enhanced things. And obviously that takes place more than 100 years after this. But I wondered whether that was actually a connection, whether or not it was sort of a subtle reference to that. So I've got a picture there of Julian Bashir with his parents from that particular Deep Space Nine episode, because I do like it when those things connect. But yeah. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Pete?
It's I think I've got thoughts on it that would tie in better in a different segment. Yeah, because it's definitely something that I kept thinking about.
Cool. But I'm sure there were others. So I mean, if anybody's out there watching and we've missed anything obvious, whether it's a planet name or a date or something like that, then please let us know in the comments. If anybody is out there watching, it would be good to know if this is interactive in any way. Would be great. So please put that down in the comments. So
excellent.
What are you seeing in front of you now?
Well, I guess there's some lights in front of me, right?
There may be indeed. Okay, so again, just for fun, this is where we kind of try and speculate where things might be going. Do you have anything, Pete?
I really think that the next episode from this one's going to take a little bit of a turn and really focus on maybe some of the other characters that we haven't seen yet or haven't spent as much time with this season. And, I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say time travel. Yeah.
Hey, I like it. I like it. Well, I had nothing last week, and I'm sticking with the Gorn are going to show up at some point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on then. I think we're already at a point to draw a line, aren't we?
I am ready.
So yeah, this is where we really get into it now and talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, any issues, any nitpicks, etc. regarding this episode. So, Pete, I talk a lot, so over to you.
Yeah, I might talk a lot about this one. I did watch it twice, maybe 3 times. I think that it, much like the first episode, it seemed to get better for me every time I watched it, and so that's nice. But I do think that they had a lot of lofty goals in this episode, but they are, again, the fatal flaw to this series is going to be that they can't make wide sweeping changes to things because we already know so much of what happens, right? And so they really tried to grapple with something that you can't change in this timeline. You can't make this different without really messing up the sandbox. And so, like, we were never, if their goal, the Illyrians' goal, was going to be to make genetic augmentation okay, it was never, you're never going to be successful in past Star Trek because we've got so much of it baked in throughout the rest of Star Trek. And so they kind of set themselves up for failure. And while I think they might have, told a good story and had some interesting points, they set an unachievable goal for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I tend to agree with you here. This is, as we've discussed on many of these streams that we've done before, this is always the problem with prequels. The problem with prequels is, you're sort of, to an extent, tied to what comes later, particularly when you're using familiar characters.
Yeah.
Now, the plus here is beyond the cage, we never really knew what happened to number one. It's not like she was a character that was seen or referenced in later Trek, in any of the Star Trek movies or anything that came later. He just appeared in that one episode, or via flashbacks in the Menagerie as well, as the first officer on board the Enterprise under Captain Pike, and that was about all we knew. She didn't even have a name or anything at that point beyond number one. So there was some sort of, I guess, I'm always talking about stakes and whatever, and she could have got put in a, if Rebecca Romaine wasn't sticking with the series, she could have got put in a Starfleet prison and we not see her for some years. But I think we all went into it knowing that that wasn't going to be the case. And, good as courtroom dramas are, and this was, it was well made and it was well acted and etc. But it was no measure of a man. There
No.
was no there was no yes, there were underriding themes and a mirror at contemporary issues and all of that sort of thing. Like Star Trek is very good at doing that allegorical type thing. But was there any real tension in this? And the problem was, no, we kind of all knew how it was going to end. We knew she was going to be okay. We knew she was going to get off at the end of it. So yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, like we knew she would be okay, but we knew that it wouldn't be a widespread decision. Starfleet was never going to see the error of its ways and allow and be open and allow augmentation where culturally appropriate, right?
Mhm.
Because it can't do that and still have a Julian Bashir, and so I think it felt a lot like I don't know. In the U.S. right now, there's lots of legal stuff going on, right? And so it felt very much of the writers' time, and the writers were sort of playing out a fantasy that they had, right? Where the legal protection for different people would be founded, and everyone would have equal rights and be able to be who they intrinsically are. The problem with that is the problem with writing that show like that, or that being the underlying thing, is that yes, Starfleet as a utopian society should then be open to that, right? And so it is the quote unquote right thing to do
Mhm.
for Starfleet to change its rules and be a more open and accepting culture. But you can't do that without sort of throwing away large parts of the show as established across multiple series and episodes. And so you've just set yourself up for failure where you cannot achieve the right thing. And so it just sort of comes off as I don't know, fantasy, like, or cosplay, maybe like a cosplay type thing where you're just pretending. uh and it's weird, right? As I say it, I'm like, yeah, well, it's a TV show, right? It's a science fiction TV show, of course everyone's pretending, but they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
like within that pretending to pretend. And uh and instead of Starfleet at the end of this doing the right thing, Starfleet does kind of the wrong thing, but they treat it as the right thing. Starfleet, instead of really dealing with the situation, just sweeps it all under the rug and says, everyone just ignore it. Everyone just ignore it. It's fine. It breaks the rules, but she can break the rules. And it's like, no, that's not right.
Mm.
But they box themselves into a corner.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, as I said, there was that sort of thing. Oh, are they going to make an example of number one? Is that why we
Yeah.
don't see her again? But we knew they weren't. So, yeah, it was kind of, and I sort of appreciated what it was trying to say, but it was about as subtle as a brick, wasn't it? Whereas I
Yeah.
think I think back in the 60s, when you look at those episodes now in retrospect, I mean, when I watched them when they were reran when I was a kid, obviously I was looking at it for all the the space battles and the aliens and the sci-fi aspects rather than the allegorical
Yeah.
Aspects. Didn't even know what that was at the time, obviously. But watching those episodes again, knowing history and obviously rewatching them, I think they were more subtle.
Oh, I disagree.
Do you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think
Because
the
this wasn't
original,
subtle, was it? I didn't think this was subtle.
it was not subtle. I don't think the original series is subtle.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe it's just watching it in hindsight with sort of knowing our history, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, I think there's a maybe it's a difference between um subtlety and nostalgia, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
because yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's fair.
half black, half white
Yeah, oh no.
people.
Well, that definitely
Um,
wasn't subtle, no.
the
And
uh,
do you know a kid up the road? Because Migo, about a decade after the series was off, there was this sort of thing. I don't know whether it was to, just before Star Trek the Motion Picture or whatever, but they started releasing some toys. I think
oh
some
yeah,
toys from the 60s. And and I remember the kid up the road, he actually had the Sharon figure, the half
oh
black, half
yeah.
white figure. And again, as kids, we were completely oblivious as to
So
what that was
yeah,
at the time. But yeah,
but even like
that's
the uh communist and American, I don't remember what the name of that episode was, but when they bring out the like fake Declaration of Independence and start reciting that. Do you remember that
mhm,
episode? Like,
mhm.
not subtle,
No.
not subtle at all. The third season, the last was it the last episode? The female captain
Oh
of
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
ship,
Well,
like,
that was kind of an embarrassing note to end Star Trek on, really,
yeah.
wasn't it?
But it's like it's not subtle. Like a lot
No,
of
you're
this
right.
is
It's
not
not.
subtle.
No.
And so I think
But then again, when you look at something, when you look at like the Next Generation era, I think something like Measure of a Man as a courtroom drama was much better written and put across than this. Yeah, or is that again? Is that my nostalgia berry going off? I don't know.
no, I think Measure of a Man, like, part of what makes that good is that it's not, the allegory is um transferable to multiple different things, right? And
Yeah.
um yeah, I guess maybe I've talked myself into a corner there because
Yeah,
you
well, that's why we have these conversations, Pete.
yeah, you definitely could sort of, take your pick as to which specific uh you know group or rights we're trying to espouse and get legally protected um in the US right now that the writers were thinking about, because so many of them are up for uh uh, what's it called, legislation right
Mhm.
now. Um, you take your pick, but I still think that what makes it not subtle is that we can tell right away why or what the writers want us to go with, right? And uh, they code the opposite side as mean, cruel, um, and right away, and so they don't, Measure of a Man. I think part of the greatness of Measure of a Man is that the villain in that actually becomes a a good character
Mhm.
in later Star Trek, right? And he keeps in contact with Data because he wanted to do what he thought was the right thing. He was just going about it the wrong way. And here, Here, Starfleet is trying to do what they think is the right thing, which is prevent future genocide, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going about it the wrong way, but at no point do we have that conversation, right? And I think we don't have that conversation because the writers are like, well, it doesn't really make sense in the allegory, right? Because uh, for whatever reason, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't have an immigration conversation, um, right? Uh, and sort of make points about the side that wants to prevent immigration, and have that side come out looking good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so it's hard to make Starfleet in this fiction here look good, right?
it's hard to have Starfleet have redeeming qualities,
Yeah.
and uh, I think that's the difference, right? Is that in Next Generation, both sides had redeeming qualities. I don't think that was the case in the original series, and I don't think it's the case here. They didn't give both sides redeeming qualities, and I don't know that I'm docking them points for that. I'm just saying that there were other ways to do it, and if they gave both sides redeeming qualities, they might have um, really elevated the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now that's good. One of the things I did, because I have to say, as you know, last week's episode, I had a lot of problems with.
That was
And
gosh, it feels so long ago, but that was
yeah,
the season premiere.
yeah, yeah. I mean, considering how I felt about season one, which obviously we only covered as a retrospective, we didn't, because it was Paramount Plus wasn't here in the UK at the time of it airing,
Yeah,
so we didn't get to do a weekly episode thing like this. But I love that so much, and so far I've been a little bit underwhelmed by this second season, if I'm honest. Obviously,
oh,
I know we're only a few episodes in, but one of the things I thought was quite interesting in this episode, which they didn't really explore, was, in getting some of Captain Robert April's backstory, or Admiral April, but, back when he was captain of the Enterprise, which was quite good. But he himself almost got put on trial there as, breaking the Prime Directive, or General Order 1, as it was called then, and whatever, on several occasions.
yeah,
Obviously, he was understandably quite pissed with Pike following that, and they've got history and a good friendship and whatever. Don't know whether any of that's ever going to come up again, but I thought that was something that was quite interesting that I kind of wanted to know more about. Was that just me, or did you?
interesting. I mean, what I would say is that I yeah, maybe I wasn't so interested in Pike. I guess when they started, or April, right? When they
Yeah, sorry.
started sort of lambasting April's Prime Directive following, right? Like, I don't know. Instantly, I was just thinking about TOS Kirk, you know, and
Yeah,
uh, so yeah, that I guess I wasn't thinking more about the Strange New World story. I was thinking about the past.
yeah.
Yeah,
The other thing that seemed odd to me was that Captain Battelle, who obviously we saw, you know, last season, has a sort of on-off relationship with Pike. Um, but the fact that she was the sort of, prosecution along with that Vulcan, that felt a bit odd to me. I don't know. I just sort of thought that it felt like just an excuse to get the character and the actress back rather than actually making actual sense in the world that they're creating. I'm am I being ultra nitpicky, or did that feel a bit weird to you?
So I 100% forgot that she was his love interest from last season.
Right. Okay.
It didn't even connect for me. I'm so
Right.
sorry. Now that you say it, I remember it. But I watched the entire thing twice, 3 times
Oh wow.
without ever thinking about that. Ever.
Okay. Yeah. No, I
I'm
just thought it
sorry.
was a little. I just thought it was a little bit odd. It was almost like, well, we want to bring this character back because there's some
Yeah.
connection, Pike, and some potential awkwardness and all this sort of stuff.
But they
And
didn't
it
use
made it
it.
made sense when she kind of was the arresting officer at the end of season one, which is where season one sort of
Mm,
pseudo cliffhanger was. But I don't know, just
yeah.
bringing her back for that, just I don't know, it felt a little forced. I don't know.
Well, they didn't use it. They didn't pay it off, right? Like
Yeah.
there was no conversation about their relationship. There was no conversation about what any of that meant. To the point where I totally forgot about it. Yeah.
Mm. Cool. I feel like we're missing something, but at the same time, I can't think of any. I only saw it the once, but I can't really think of any. It seems to be a quite divisive episode from what I've seen, because I've tried to avoid the reviews as such, but I have seen various comments where people either love this and applaud it, or absolutely hate it. It doesn't seem to be too middling on it from what
So
I
I
can see.
think part of that is the part of that I think is just a big standard issue with new Trek, right? Where new Trek comes at things with a very liberal bent, and there's a lot of people who 50% of the population disagree with that, right? um, and so uh, you get into things, be it immigration, reproductive rights, sexual equality, right? And um, you know people are just going to focus in on that and then remember that they're supposed to hate it,
Mhm.
or hate whoever is on the opposite side of the issue from them. And so I'll say that I'm exceedingly liberal in my views and opinions. So I guess I'm aligning with the Star Trek writers here, but I'm still going to hold them to task when I think that sort of gets in the way of the show.
Well, I think this. Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite interesting you saying that, because I think there's two different things there,
Oh
right? There
yeah,
is, well, there's, in my opinion, and this is where I struggle with a lot of the arguments, is there is a line between the contemporary politics and agendas that go into these things and poor quality writing.
yeah,
They're different things, right?
totally different
Like
things.
for example, you can agree or disagree with one or the other, but it's not an excuse for things being written badly. And I think sometimes in the creative landscape, obviously there's a whole writers' strike going on as we're recording this. But I often find sometimes that I get into arguments with people where they think I'm disagreeing with a political message or something, and my beef with something is not that, it's the fact that it's just not very well written or produced, that it's just
Yeah,
low quality. And I think, why are those you know creatives and writers who are in a privileged position to do this not producing something of a higher quality? And I'm not necessarily just talking about Star Trek here, but any number of things at the moment. And there is I find in conversations, if they get more heated about that, is you can often find that people are arguing about different things because you're talking about the creativity and not forcing a message through creativity. But if something's not done well, like not written well, then that's a whole nother thing, right? Am I making sense? I feel like I'm not making
100%, you're making sense. I feel
sense.
like we're saying the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that was my original criticism of this episode, is
Right.
that they wanted to make a statement,
Yeah.
but they chose their battle exceedingly poorly, because in the
Right.
world of Star Trek, they can't do what they wanted to do and
Yeah.
make genetic augmentation a-okay, because everyone should be free to be who they are and celebrate their culture, right?
Yeah.
Which is
We,
like a line straight out of the episode. And I'm like, no, you can't actually say that in this
well,
case,
and,
because yeah,
yeah, and the other problem with that, in terms of the Star Trek that Roddenberry initially sort of conceived back in the 60s anyway, was that it was supposed to be a utopia where, at least on Earth it was. I know the problems were away from Earth, right, which they were going to explore. But those sort of conflicts on Earth were supposed to have been sort of solved anyway, right?
yeah.
So
But I think that there's still opening to that in all of Star Trek, right?
yeah.
Like,
Oh, I mean,
and
definitely. Beyond Roddenberry, that was, as I said, my entry point into Star Trek was the movies, as you know. And
yeah,
let's be honest, Nick Meyer, who did a great job with Wrath of Khan and whatever, but he and Harv Bennett and everything said, we've got to bring conflict into this to have drama. Yeah.
yeah.
Not like, even though Gene was a bit opposed to some of their ideas, but yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother God. There's
Yeah, but
dozens of
that also
things.
just goes back to, like, they're not doing it subtly when you're
Right.
saying side A is perfect,
Yeah.
right? And like, you're not doing it subtly when you're saying Earth is perfect and is a full utopia.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go set straight
And,
everyone else.
and again,
Uh,
the economics of it all as well. But that's a
yeah,
whole, yeah.
yeah,
All right. I think otherwise we could talk about this all day, literally. But
yeah.
rankings. So we've got our rank stripe rating system for this show to match the uniforms. I think last time we went with on episode 1, lieutenant.
I think
Didn't
so.
we both go with a lieutenant?
Yeah,
So just sort of slightly sort of middle of the road, maybe just below middle. As we got 6. But
yeah.
where are you feeling for this one?
I think this is a lieutenant commander. I will say
Okay.
that I thought this would have been a better episode 1 than last week's episode, you know?
Yes.
I think that it could have done a lot. I think some of its flaws might have been easier to overlook
Yeah.
if we had built in the excitement of the return,
Yeah.
right?
No, I agree. I mean, I think on that note, because one could argue, why wasn't this the first episode? And I think, had it not been for the Laan character needing to be sort of back in the fold, back as a security chief of security or whatever in
Yeah.
Starfleet, this could have easily been the first episode. But obviously we needed to go where we did on that episode in order to get Laan Noonien Singh back into the story. That's what it seems anyway. But
Yeah, I can't defend episode 1 for that. Like,
no.
you could have just had her come back with the lawyer,
Yeah.
right? Like,
No, I agree. But for me, I'm going to stick. I'm going to stick with Lieutenant because I had as many problems, I think, with this episode as I did with the first one. Certain things not quite working and lining up for me.
interesting.
I sort of appreciated what they were trying to do, but I'm not necessarily sure
it worked.
Entirely worked. If I'm being honest, and
So
you know,
yeah,
I'm putting it up against things like the Menagerie and Measure of a
yeah.
Man, which are kind of hard ones to follow. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yeah,
I
cool.
think we're in the same place. I'm just much more forgiving.
Well, hey, this is a
Yeah.
bit of role reversal, Pete.
Absolutely. I was
Bloody
going to
hell.
say, this might be the first time that I've rated an episode higher than you.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and open a channel.
Great. So if you are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to check out our podcast version. You can find Let's See What's Out There on all good podcasting apps, or LSWOT cast on all social medias. And you can send us an email directly. Share your thoughts with us. lswotcast@gmail.com. I've been Pete Mealy. Thanks so much. Keith, where can people find more of you and your work?
Yeah. Well, as I said, if you're around on this channel, yeah, check out some of our other stuff. I also have a home media review on here of the Star Trek films on Blu-ray. I know they've recently come out on 4K UHD as well. And I've also covered Strange New Worlds Season 1 as well. So, in terms of physical home media. So please check that out. If you want to see more of my creative stuff, I also have another channel, which is British Isles, which is EYLES, as in my last name. And there's half a dozen short films on there that you could check out. Please do, comment, share, all that sort of good stuff. And just to give a shout out to Neil Myers, who does the theme music for this show. His work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. But yeah, that just really leaves me to thank you guys for watching. And Pete, as always, thanks for doing this with me.
Keith, thank you so much. I always love talking Star Trek with you.
Indeed.
We should do it again real soon.
We should do it again real soon. In fact, we will see you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now.